welcome to CCM Discovery. I'm Roger St. James. I'm glad you're here. Now, this is a place where we slow down a little bit and we talk about the music that shapes our faith. Nothing rushed, polished to perfection, just honest conversation about the creativity, callings, and the way God shows up in the middle of real life. Now, each episode, I get to sit down with artists, worship leaders, authors, and folks behind the scenes who are figuring things out just like the rest of us are trying to do. We're going to talk about what inspires them, what challenges them, and how their walk with Christ shapes the songs, the words, and the things they share with the world. Now, my hope is that as you listen, you'll hear something that encourages you, or maybe gives you a fresh way to think about your own journey. Now, so settle in, take a breath, and let's explore this together. This is CCM Discovery, and I'm Roger St. James.
Take my strength from knowing you will always be the same. Standing on your word, I finally see purpose in the pain. Purpose in the pain. I can see purpose in the pain.
And that was just a preview of the man we're going to talk to right now. Mr. Matt Hybarger, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here with you, Roger. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's great to meet you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And what we like to do here when we start is I want to give you the opportunity to do something that we don't get to do too often. I want you to brag on your family. Tell me all about them and how wonderful they are.
Well, I have a pretty good-sized family. I have my wife, Beth, who is an incredible singer in her own right. Matter of fact, she's the most talented person in the family. There's no question about it. She sings with an a cappella group called the Rich Tone Chorus. And there's this organization called Sweet Adeline, and they have these international contests every year, and they've actually won the international championship 5 times.
Oh,
And
wow.
she's on their front row, which is the ones that not just do they sing all these intricate parts, but they do choreography as well. And then I have my son Micah, Joseph. I've got Chris and Caitlin and Ryan. And then there's 2 grandbabies. There's Olivia and there's Willow. And then of course the dogs and cat, or the dog and cats. That I spend most of my time with, it seems. But matter of fact, I thought I had Conley, our cat, for a co-host. He wouldn't leave, so I finally got him out of the door. But
Oh, that would have been fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, he's a character. He's a rescue from a hoarder's house, one of 32 cats. So he's got obviously some idiosyncrasies, let's just say. But I'm really blessed. I got a great family, and they all know the Lord, and I'm blessed. I couldn't be more blessed.
I'm glad to hear that, and I always like to hear that when we start off a conversation. That way, we get to know who you are, who's behind you, as you go through what you're doing every day.
Yeah.
And when you said grandchildren, I was surprised because you don't look like you could have grandchildren.
Oh, but I can, yeah.
But that does explain that you've actually been in ministry for like 42 or more years.
Yeah.
How did that whole thing start?
My whole life and career has been based on here am I, send me. I was attending a church, little Assembly of God church in Bedford, Texas, and they'd had a pastoral changeover, and I'd been one of the leaders in the youth group, and this new pastor came in, and there wasn't very many people left, and he said, would you consider staying and ministering to these kids? I don't have anybody. And he didn't have a whole lot. He had like 6, 7 kids, and I was like, well, yeah, of course. Because I felt like God had called me to be a youth pastor. I really did. And I spoke to a couple of my mentors about it, a couple of my older brothers in the faith, and they said, "Bro, if somebody gives you an opportunity, go for it. That could be the Lord,
Yep.
opening a door." And so, when you're faithful in a few things, He makes you the ruler of many. And so I started there, and about a year into it, I guess they moved away, and the section sent in somebody, same thing. Would you consider staying? And I'm like, okay. And the church started to grow though. But there was an older gentleman that was leading the singing on Sunday morning. Good brother, but he was a World War II veteran. And he had a big booming voice, but he'd get up there. And you got to remember, this was a time when we really didn't have a lot of active conflict going on in the world. And you wanted to stop and pray for those boys entrenched in battle overseas. It was just stuff like that, And um, but they didn't have anybody else to do it. And he said, and I had started singing for our youth group, just getting together. We just sing some choruses. Me and a friend named Wade Jackson played the guitar, and we just sang some choruses. I never considered myself a singer. Matter of fact, I was told I couldn't sing. But I'm one of those guys that, jack of all trades. I'll give it a
Yeah.
try. And so Pastor Pickens he said, "My wife heard you sing. She says you're very good." I said, "Well, she might need to get her ears checked with all due respect, because I've been told otherwise." "Who told you that?" And I told him, and I don't want to say who it was, but he said, "Listen to yourself and hear yourself the way God hears you. Don't hear yourself the way someone critical is hearing you. But listen and just see what you think." And so he recorded me, and I was like, I mean, not the greatest, but not the worst.
Yeah.
And he said, "Would you consider helping us out on Sunday mornings and doing some of the newer songs? We'll let this brother sing the hymns if you'll do the newer choruses." And I said, "Okay." I knew nothing about music. I knew nothing about singing. And then he said, "Would you consider singing a solo sometime?" And I said, "I like to sing solo. You can't hear me." The old joke. And so I was like, okay. And back in the day, you probably remember this, they had those accompaniment tracks. They were the little
Yep.
cassettes.
The cassette.
And,
Yep.
and Word had them, and they were cool. They were silver, and they had these little wheels in them. And I remember going through there, and there was on the front, they would have the range.
Yep.
And I didn't even know chords or notes. And so a friend said that FACE, or every good boy does fine. What does that mean? And so they took me to the piano and started showing me. And so I started listening to the songs going, okay, I can't do that. I can't do that. Hey, that one's pretty good. And I mean, there was like barely any movement on the thing at all. I'll do that song. I'll never forget. It was a Chris Christian song called "We Are an Offering." And that was the first song I ever sang. And then just kind of went from there, and I taught myself to play piano. I taught myself to play drums. And then I said, well, how do I find a chord? And this lady, who was a classical pianist, took my little New Testament and wrote down, okay, this is C, D. She showed me what the notes were. And this note plus 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 1, 2, 3, that's a chord. And that's how I learned the chords.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
learned there was things like inversions, and then there's melodies, and all that came. I'm talking about hours and hours and hours. As a single 22-year-old kid, I got nothing to do. So I'm up there at the church. I'm working there now, just playing the piano all night long. And that's how it all began. And then I went on, and I pastored later. I was a youth pastor, associate pastor. I kind of did every job, and then
Yeah.
finally pastored myself. And 42 years has gone by really fast.
That's a great. I love that stories like that. And that's what I'm just so glad that God gave this show as a way to tell those stories.
Right.
As to see how it started, just from a simple, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot, see what happens, and to where you are now. Now, while you were telling that story, you had a lot of faith inspired things going on. Where did your walk with faith start? How did you get into that?
It's quite a story. I was raised, we weren't even Creasters. We weren't even Christmas and Easter Christians. My mom said, well, we're members of the Martin Methodist Church down there. And I was like, well, how come we never go if we're members? It's kind of like having a health club deal. You never go, right? But my grandmother, my mom's mom, she and her sisters lived in a little small town called Meridian. It's between Fort Worth and Waco. and there was less than 1,000 people there, and she went to the First Methodist Church down there. Her sisters went to the First Baptist Church down there. And on the fifth Sunday, the Baptist and Methodists would get together and their choirs would sing and they'd have a potluck, good old days.
Yeah.
And she'd make me go if I stayed with her. I stayed with her a lot. And she'd always call me and say, Matt, did you say your prayers? Just always reminding me about stuff. And then I went way off the deep end. I was an athlete and just getting myself in all kinds of trouble and almost got shot one night. That's another. This is what you don't have This is like to be a mini series to tell a story, but
We got all the time in the world. These are going to be great stories, Matt.
I ended up. I'd gotten kicked out of a public school, so I was going to a Christian school, which was a football factory basically. Ended up getting kicked out of there too. So I'm hanging out, and you gotta remember I'm like 17 years old, 16, 17 years old. I'm hanging out at a bar, right? And I was actually trying to date one of the workers there, one of the girls that worked there, and somebody got sassy with her or whatever, and I confronted the guy, and he was an older guy, like that. I thought, well, I can whip this guy, but he pulled out a gun.
Yeah.
And I had been trained to defend myself since I was 7 years old. I've been trained in martial arts since I was 7. I knew I could take him, but I was at that place that we call dead man's land. I wasn't close enough to try to engage. I wasn't far enough away to move. And this was like a 38, wasn't an automatic. And he pulled it up and he pointed at me and he pulled the trigger and nothing happened.
Wow.
And he was shocked. And before he could take another shot, I clocked him and I ran. I get around the corner of this place and I can hear boom, boom. I can hear bullets, And I'm like, okay. And so I run. This is before cell phones. This is back when there was pay phones, if you can imagine.
Yep.
This is before any of that stuff. I'm running. Finally getting a hold of a friend of mine, who's an older guy, friend of mine, who can come pick me up because I'm hiding. Because this guy and his buddies are driving around with a little spotlight looking for me. And I'm hiding. I'm running through backyards. I'm just trying not to get killed at that point. I was going, and I left out the important part. My mom told me, she said, son, that's 2 schools in a year. You have one more chance. She was going to send me to Marine Military Academy. And I didn't want to go to Marine Military Academy. I had long hair at the time. I definitely didn't want to go to Marine Military Academy. But there was a church school that a friend of hers' son had been in trouble, went there. The church was called Christian Center, and their little school was Liberty Christian Academy. Well, the pastor of that church was a man named Gary McSpadden. Anybody who knows about Christian music knows about Gary McSpadden.
Yep.
Original Imperial, original lead singer of the Gaither Vocal Band, original Oak Ridge Boy. Just a wonderful man of God. And I end up at his church at his school. Well, I get in trouble there the first day. And I really didn't even do anything. I was defending some kids getting picked on. And I have to walk in and see Gary in the office. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm headed down to Marine Military. They're going to shave my head, And Gary, I'll never forget going in there. Big guy, 6'3", 200 pounds, handsome, deep voice. Matt, won't you tell me what happened? I said, well, I'd rather not. He goes, well, go ahead. Because I found that I heard what the principal said, what these boys said, but I found that the truth is almost always somewhere in the middle. So I'd like to hear your side. I said, okay, so I told him what happened. And he goes, okay. He said, so basically you took up for 2 younger boys who were being picked on. You might have used some language I wouldn't advise you to use, but you didn't do anything. So are you supposed to be in trouble for standing up for? I said, no. Yeah, I didn't know. He said,
Good
stand
answer.
up. He said, stand up. He says, you've got to call a God on your life. He says, that's why the devil's fighting so hard for you. He says, I'm not going to let you forget it, but I'll make you a deal. He stuck his big old hand out and shook my hand. He goes, you promised me that you're going to do your best while you're here. You're going to keep your nose clean. You're not going to use bad language. And then he goes, and if you have to do something, you won't get any blood on the new carpet. And I said, yes, sir. And he put his hand on me on my shoulder and he goes, God's got big plans for you, son. And that was the first time I'd ever encountered Christian just kindness and, just being genuine. And it did something. Well, So I'm still being an idiot, right? So the story about that happened. The next night, I go to the youth service. Okay, so they had 200 kids in their youth group back then. Now that
Wow.
happens all the time, but not then. This was a big church, had this great thing. They had a band. And I don't just be, I mean, they had like horns, they had like Chicago, like the whole sound. It was amazing. This is 1980, you know what I'm saying? So you got to remember.
Wow.
And I go, and I didn't want to go, and I go, and a bunch of things happened to get me there. And there was a guy there, I'll never forget. His name was John Collins. He's gone on to be with the Lord. He preached a message called Your Day in Court. And he described what's going to happen on that day when you stand before Jesus. And he said, I'm going to tell you my story. And he went through all this detail. Just the guy was the most incredible communicator, painted these pictures. And he said, all this stuff happens, the devil comes out. And again, you have to go back in time. It's like the computer paper on the rolls, you know. You roll it out, he rolls it down the aisle, you see it's everything you've ever done, and it's all there. Even that, you know, it's all there. And then your defense attorney says, I want to say my client is guilty of all these things. It's like, what? You lost your mind? However, he raised his hand and there was a hole in it. He said, I've paid the price for those crimes. And he should be set free because the judgment has already been paid. When he told that story, I mean, to this day, it gets me emotional because something just, you know, in my heart, it just broke open. I could not wait for that guy to close. You know how preachers, as I continue to close, just close. I was the biggest, toughest, strong. I ran like crying like a little girl down there to that altar to get saved. And that's when the whole thing began. So God had to do some, I mean, there's a whole lot more to the backstory, but God did supernatural thing after supernatural thing just to get me in the kingdom. So the least I could do was say, okay, Lord, use me. Let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. And here, you know, 42 years later, he's still doing it.
Oh, man, that's a that is an amazing story. I love that. We have and here as we've talked to so many people, a theme has run through the show, and we kind of call it the hand on your shoulder.
Oh yeah.
That you don't see it until 42 years later. You can step back and you see where God was pointing and guiding you the whole way around, and that was an amazing story, man. And we just got started.
Well,
You're
I'm
right.
like
This
you,
might.
brother. I'm like you, brother. I can talk, man. So,
Oh no,
but
I think you may be right. This could be a 3, 4, 5 part series. We might. But so from there, you talked a little bit how you just learned to play the guitar. I mean, learned to play the drums, learned to play the piano. What were your musical influences at that point? I mean, who were you listening to?
well, you know, before I got saved, I was listening to all kinds of garbage out there. I had always dabbled in singing, and I don't know why I ever took the criticism the way I did and let it shut me down. You can't do that to me anymore. I won't. You
No,
know, if I know God's called me to do something, you can tell me, well, you don't need to do it that way, and I don't care who you are. If God told me to do it, good luck stopping me. You know, I'm going to
perfect.
do it. Um, I can remember, and this is really, it's going to sound funny. I can say it now because I'm an old man. It doesn't matter if I say it. In 1980 alone, 79, 80 alone, I saw, and I'm sorry to your listeners, this was me before I was a Christian. I saw AC/DC in concert. I saw Van Halen. I saw the Cars. I saw Barry Manilow. I took a neighbor's daughter to see Sean Cassidy. Uh, you know, Mr. Do Run
To
Run.
do ron 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 to do ron ron.
I always loved pop music, but rock and roll, and then country music because I am from Fort Worth, Texas. You got to love country, right? And you know George Strait, those guys, just early on, those early country guys, they were so smooth. But I never knew exactly what I wanted to sing. In Christian music, Gary McSpadden was it. But I'll never forget the first time I sang for him at his church in Branson. He stood up in front of the congregation with me and he goes, you know, Matt never sang for me. And Carol, his wife, after he passed away during COVID and stuff, I was supposed to be there, and then he got sick and he passed away. And they had me back to go ahead and share. And I was there just to kind of encourage the church to keep going. You know, that there was a vision that Gary had given Carol and that God had given Carol and Gary. Carol's still there, you know, and you guys are part of it, and let's keep it going. Um, and remember who you are. And it's my low power light came on. Um, but I just remember him saying, I said, well, no, because if I sang, that takes time away from you. I'd rather hear you sing than me.
Yep.
You got to remember Christian Center. So you've got Gary. He's bringing in people that he knows, right, from the Gaither Trio. So, so Larnell Harris comes and sings. A young Amy Grant comes and sings. Sandy Patty comes and sings. Why would I even? And I saw people, my friends, try to get up and sing. I've got one friend, I won't name his name. He was doing the band thing the same time I was back in the 80s and 90s, and they played at Footloose quite a bit too, and he was great. But that guy had no confidence from being busted down so many times. Well, you're not like Gary, you're not like Gary, you're not like Gary. No.
Yeah.
And I wasn't either. And so I wasn't about to get up there and do that. Now I'm a jock. I'll just play basketball. You guys can have that singing. And then God said, well, no, I think I want you to sing too. So that was my influences. They were kind of all over the board. Therefore, when I started doing music and listening to Christian music, Keith Green was a guy when I first got saved. Obviously, Russ Taff, the Imperials, amazing. Who else was really DeGarmo and Key? They were awesome. Whiteheart with Steve Green. that was
Mylon Lefevre.
Mylon Lefevre. Yeah, I got a chance to know Mylon later, and it was really cool guy. Really cool guy.
Yeah, that's some, and from there you've gone on to work with a lot of the people that influenced you. And what I want to do here is, off to my right here a little bit, I have a list of some of the people you've worked with. And if it's okay with you, I want to throw out a name, and then you can tell us a story about that person if you want to play this little fun game. Okay, let's start with one of the big names, Stephen Curtis Chapman.
So Stephen, met him, Greg Oliver, who owned Footloose, and went on to be he's still a big booking agent in Nashville. Greg Oliver Agency, GOA. They book a lot of authors and stuff now, but they did all the acts back then. And he would bring in, Footloose was every Friday and Saturday night, $5 at the door. Stephen Curtis Chapman, For Him, The Imperials, Jeff Moore in the Distance, Rich Mullins. We had Larry Norman there. We had Phil Kagi there. We had Randy Stonehill. We had, you name it. If you were on the radio back then, if you were on Kojo or KLTY, I think the only people we didn't have were the big ones. Michael W. Smith, Carmen, Sandy was never there. Who else? Just the big guys that played stadiums and stuff. They didn't come, but everybody else did. But Stephen, I met him. Greg would book me in my band because I was free. I helped to get the wood and build the stage at the original Footloose. That was a teen club that ended up being turned into there was a Christian night, and then it turned into a Christian concert deal, and then it moved to a church and did it anyway. So I had connections going all the way back with that. But I was there and I helped volunteer and stuff. I was in charge of security. I'll never forget one time because I was actually working as a security guard. My brother had hooked up this thing, and I was licensed to carry. And we had Sheila Walsh come in.
Oh yeah.
And her husband, Norman, was at the time the big manager, required that there was an actual certified bonded security guard to escort her from the dressing room to the stage. Well, at that club, the dressing room to the stage was about 3 feet. And so Greg said, just show up, bring your deal, and wear your suit, whatever. And so I did that. And after that, I was just kind of in. But Greg would use me. He said, hey, you want to sing? I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then I got a band. Can you get a band? Sure, I got a band. But I met Stephen because I was going to get a chance to sing. He booked a Whiteheart concert. And I didn't really want to, I was doing covers, man. I really, didn't want to mess with that. But Sparrow sent Stephen with Whiteheart. So we're all warming up and stuff. I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to do some songs. And they send this other guy. Once I met him, mullet and all.
Yeah.
And I heard this shredding. But it was Stephen. shredding the guitar. And I was like, and Weekdays, his first single had just hit. I said, he needs to do the whole thing. I don't want to do any of it. And, we just kind of got to know each other after that. Whenever he'd come to town, I'd pick him up at the airport. I'll never forget one time we borrowed Greg's father-in-law's big Suburban, and I went out and picked him up because they were getting ready for the show, and Steven's flight was late. Came back, and then they took off to the lake, and all Steven's tracks and stuff were in the car. And Greg had to drive all the way out to the lake to get them. So there's a Steven story. But yeah, he's a good brother. I saw him for years and years. Anytime he'd come to town, I'd always get together and but that was what was cool about Footloose. It was really a thing where you got a chance to get to know these guys kind of off the stage, and it was a really neat opportunity.
That's what I had the pleasure of meeting several artists back then, and when you were able to sit down with them and away from, and the biggest thing that I always found is when you got them away from their manager.
Yeah.
Because and the manager's job is to protect them. I understood that. But when you're able to get, like, I sat down with David Meese one time and had an incredible conversation with that guy. I met so many people, but that conversation sticks with me because he was such a interesting dude.
Yeah, that's a nice way to say it. I opened for him one time too. Yes, I did. I riffed some Bee Gees jokes on him while I was his opening act.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun, and another guy that I had the pleasure to sit down with. You also did, Rich Mullins. That was It's one of those things. I have a picture of myself with Beaker, but I don't have one with Richard.
Yeah, Rich, he did photos when you wanted. I got to open for him twice. My memory of Rich Mullins is going and trying to find a place that served good Indian food close to the venue because he had to get back for sound check. And this is before Waze and Google Maps, and we're just cell phones. We're just out driving, and Greg's getting furious. I had a pager. I could see my pager was going off. Where are you at? And we're just driving around trying to find Indian food. Now you can't throw a rock and you can hit a Indian restaurant any direction, but there was nothing back then. We drove all the way into Irving, which is about 20 miles away, and I said, "What time is it?" I said, we were supposed to be back there about 15 minutes ago." They were so mad. At me, of course, not at Rich, but at me. So,
yeah, he wasn't. From my brief encounter with him, he wasn't big on clocks.
Clocks, shoes, anything like that. He didn't care about any of it.
Barbers for a while, that got really. He was. Brother. Yeah. Another time, did he ever tell you the Amy Grant story? Oh, we'll have to, we don't have time for it here, but I'll tell you that. So it's an amazing story. It's great. And another person that we both know you far better than is Michael English. I would still say he probably had one of the best voices that I've ever heard.
Oh yeah. No question. Mike, when all the stuff happened with him, and the church just canceled him.
Yeah, which
that's what the church does.
That's another show.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah.
But I remember he was doing a few things here and there, and his booking agent at the time was a lady named Renee, wonderful lady. And I'd used her in the past for some other people, and there was a guy that worked for him that kind of did his opening stuff that I had him in a couple of times. She also booked him. And she said, "Pastor Matt, would you consider having Michael?" And I didn't get the message. It was, voicemail. Again, no cell phone. Maybe it was on my voicemail at the church. And so I felt like I should. A lot of people weren't booking him back then. And he just started to come back. And I said, I called Gary McSpadden. And I said, because I'd heard a lot of stuff, because Gary right there, he and Bill Gates were great friends for years. He's the one that helped bring Mike into there. Mike is the one that took Gary's spot as the lead.
Yeah.
And Gary moved down to baritone. So they were close. And he said, "Yeah, you should have him." He said, "Mike he's changed. His heart has been broken, and the Lord's really moving in him. And yeah, if you do that, I think it'll be a blessing for your church and for you." I said, "Okay." And I'll never forget because Chris Tucker, no, I can't remember his last name. Chris traveled with him, and Mike wouldn't do his own sound checks because he's like me. He only got so much voice. You don't want to waste it on sound check, right? You got to have it for the. And so he would come to us stuff like that, and he says, "Yeah, Mike just wants to know. Mike just wants to know." I said, "Tell him service is his, man. Just tell him to follow the Lord." He said, "What?" I said, "Just tell him to follow the Holy Spirit, whatever he feels led to do." And he goes, "Oh gosh, okay, thanks." And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I'm sitting in the office, and they're going to come back up there because Michael would just come up again. You don't want to deal. He's still coming out of all that stuff and kind of come
Yeah.
out of it. And he'd show up, 5 minutes before the concert, go do his thing, and he'd leave, right? And I already knew that. I didn't care. And so he called, and he goes, Chris called, and I go, "Hey, bud, what's up?" He goes, "Pastor Matt, it's Michael English." I said, "Hey, bud." He said, "Hey, I just wanted to. Did you say you just want me to follow my heart?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Always." I said, "Man, you can't go wrong doing that." And he told me, he said, "That's the first time anybody's done that to me since anything happened." They always said, "Well, are you still doing this? Are you still doing whatever?" I said, "Bro, if it's under the blood, who am I to dig it up, man?"
Yeah.
You know, um, we've all made the mistakes. We've all, and that's kind of, I've seen that stuff for so many years. I hate it. My next project is really going to throw people that have followed my music for years because it's not going to be anything like anything I've ever done before. Um, but I realize I've been writing songs for people that are hurting, for the wounded. Uh, this is directed towards the ones who did the wounding. This is
Oh,
uh,
wow.
not just the lost in the hurt outside the church, but the ones who got hurt inside the church. I want them to know that God sees and they're not alone. There's because there's so much stuff that's happened, so much stuff being in the news and all this mess, and I just think that of all things, Roger, I was doing a Bible study on Amos of all people, the book of Amos, and boy, that hit me. The plumb line. I mean, like, whoa. When that line, that's what God calls us all to walk. But you can't measure anything else until you first measure yourself. That's why the word is a mirror. It's not for you to take it and throw it at other people. And so one of my new songs is going to be called Grace Amnesia because it's a condition that I see in the church today. A whole lot of people forgot what we've been saved from and delivered from.
Oh, man.
And yeah, so these things are, I'm still doing, I've got several things I'm working on because I can't get away from encouraging and bringing hope to people. That's why we're here. But I am going to challenge some of my brethren and sistren uh, in
That's
the
good.
ministry to take a look.
I think that's important, especially with the way things are going now. I mean, um, what do you think? I need you. Well, I'll get back to that. You're writing all these new songs. You got this new project coming out, and you have something that you call your silent year.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So I think we kind of jumped ahead going into what you're. A lot of this stuff came from that, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. It. What's going to happen here is my phone's going to die, so it's going to be great because I'm using having to use the headphones. Hey, it's okay. Part two.
We're good.
We'll get a good hit on the part when I still have 11% battery, so we'll be okay. Um, no, the silent year was just I've got these health issues that I'm battling, and they all just kind of came to a head at once. It's just without belaboring it, it's just I've got multiple autoimmune disorders. They cause all kinds of inflammation. That cause arthritic stuff, and just it's rough. And the pain sometimes, I mean, I broke my neck in 1999, and that kind of was the catalyst for a lot of the stuff. But you learn to manage your pain. But then when all of a sudden it just starts, like somebody just keeps turning the knob up, and then
Yeah.
you do stuff like this with the shoulder. It's like, oh, that's a 17. Never had that before. On a scale of 1 to 10, 26. But no, I just I had left a church I'd served at for many years just because I was I couldn't sign on. I'd been working for a ministry that's a well-known ministry as an operations director. I just lost myself there. I kept seeing stuff that, we threw "What Would Jesus Do" away in the 90s or whenever it
Yeah,
was,
pretty much.
when it should have continued to be our go-to. I kept seeing that, would Jesus do this? No. Would Jesus act like this? No, no, no. Why am I here? Why am I lending credibility to this? And so I just didn't want to do that anymore. I got tired of hearing the same old stuff. I got tired of hearing things preached that I knew were not biblical. I knew it was something that was twisted around. And I was like, I can't just keep sitting here. I love these people, but, I got to love them enough to walk. And then maybe if I walk, maybe somebody will go, huh.
Yeah.
But ended up just, and then just dealing with all kinds of, the pain and the emotional aspect of that, and then the separating from the church I'd been at for a number of years, and all those things. I said, you know what? I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing music. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sit back, Lord. You and me. You got to fix me. Somehow along there, I've gotten wired in. That my wires have gotten crossed, or I've got wired into stuff I don't want to be wired into. And Lord, I just want a direct link to you. Well, you can do that, but it costs you everything. You have to just step out. So I took a job that involves me going into grocery stores on a daily basis and just, auditing stuff for brands and whatever else. I'm well familiar with it, been doing it. It's not an executive job. It pays pretty good, but it's not a big time job. I don't get to be on a stage. Nobody listens to me sing. Nobody, but I do get to tell people about Jesus. And I do get to encourage people. So I, kind of dig it. And then people don't paint me as a preacher. So if I give them an encouraging word or tell them that the Lord loves them, I was talking with a Muslim brother yesterday who's a 7-Eleven owner, and he just made some statements, and he's a nice, he's not what we, radicalize, whatever. He's just a guy that believes the wrong way. I'm sorry. Jesus said, John 14:6, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He said Father because there's lots of little g gods out there. There's only one Father, and that's him, and that's how you get there. And we talked about it, and it just kept getting me, what we allow to speak for us in the church doesn't speak for me. So what do I do about that? Are you just going to shout people down and be louder? No. You're going to live out loud. You're going to live your life louder. You're going to live your life in a way of love. You're going to impact people like I wanted to have when I was a lost kid. Not somebody going, boy, are you a Christian? You need to be a Christian. You're going to go to hell. Right. That face. And I would just say, be a Christian. Are you a Christian? Yes. So I'd have to be like you? No thanks. But that's the reality, man. For so many people, we're turning people off, And so I just thought, I'm just going to sit back and I'm just going to be a normal person. I love going to church when nobody knows me, nobody recognizes me, nothing. It's awesome, I don't have to be Pastor Matt. I don't have to be on. I can just go and worship the Lord. I can go tell some young person who's up there leading worship, hey, great job, And then I found out later, somebody texted me, hey, I'm the worship leader at such church. I saw you were in our church last Sunday, you and your wife. I said, yeah, it was a great service. We really enjoyed it. Would you be interested in being part of the worship team? No.
Nope.
You don't understand. No. I don't know what I'm going to do next as far as outside of this music, as far as serving, but God's going to show me, and he's going to tell me, and he's going to do it very directly, and there's going to be no doubt about it. And if he says, keep doing what you're doing, then, we'll find us a good church and lock down there. I mean, I don't know why people think they have to be on a stage. You don't have to be on a stage. No. Your stage is your life, man. That's the one that really counts.
Yeah, it's living it, not talking about it. It's you want people to see God in you, not hear God from you. Right. And you're doing it, and you've got this project coming out, and that's going to be. You got me really interested in it. I want to see how you mix up, because your music is so encouraging, and now it's going to be a little different angle. It's going to be fascinating to hear.
Yeah, it's going to surprise people, I think. And all I've said to people that have followed me for years is just give it a chance. It may not be the style you like, and that's okay. But I want you to consider the lyrics. Some of the stuff I'm saying is very direct. And it almost has to be in a kind of almost a punk pop kind of style to say
Yeah.
those things because you can say them with a smile. Um, I'm not naming names. Somebody said, "Well, is this about somebody in particular?" No. Why? I'm not mentioning anybody. You know why? Because number one, I'm not called to do that. Number two, if I mention somebody in particular, it lets everybody else off the hook that it fits. The whole point of this record is not to call people out. I'm over that.
Yeah.
The whole point of this record is to show people, hey, here's a mirror. Here's your standard. Here's Jesus. Here's the plumb line. Look here. Does this look like you? There's a split screen here. Whoop, I just knocked it out. There's a split screen here with you and me. Okay?
Yeah.
You're on one side, I'm on the other. Okay? Hey, we're both, got dark hair and stuff like that, but you can tell we're different, right? You're going to be like that with Jesus anyway. But you should be looking more and more. They say that couples look alike as they get older. They say
Yeah.
that pets look like when they get older. You should be looking more like Jesus every day you live if you're really living for him. And that's what I want when people look in the mirror and they see Jesus in there. And then look at yourself. Is it just this horrible contrast? Do you have this mask on, or are you starting to look more like him every day, you know? And that's going to be the challenge of all this stuff. And I'm still going to do stuff. I've got another project I've kind of got in my back pocket that came up with a title called Songs from Pulpits and Porches.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's just going to be some songs about life and about the Lord, because it's all about the Lord. And there's no way, if you really are a believer, that you can't work Jesus into any conversation that you have. And in the love of Jesus.
I'm getting a very Keith Green vibe from you right now.
I tell you what, I wish. Man, I tell you what, that dude, the stuff he wrote, when you think about Asleep in the Light, could you imagine trying to get that on adult CCM radio?
Oh, yeah. So you want to go back to Egypt?
Yeah.
So you want to go back to Egypt?
I pledge my head, all the stuff he said. And the thing is, I almost believe, and I think Melody, his wife, I think she mentioned this, it's like he knew he didn't have a lot of time. Something in him just kind of, he knew he wasn't here for the long haul, so he said everything he needed to say. And, he didn't leave one in the chamber, but he got it all out there. And that's what I want to do. I mean, that's what I'm looking at, brother. I'm looking at my stage of life, my age. I've got, even if the Lord doesn't come soon, which, looks like it could happen, I got way less in front of me than I have behind me, so I might as well make the most of them, and try to pick up and encourage as many people as I can along the way.
And that's exactly how I'm trying to look at it too, because back there doesn't matter anymore.
Nope.
It's what we're walking into is what matters. And to that point, they say that there's a lot of some new energy in the church, some new revitalizing of the church. What do you think people are actually looking for?
From what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, when I'm running across people, they're still going to pack out the megachurch. They're still going to pack out the worship concert, that they have. But brother, when I go to church now, I don't see worship. I don't see congregation. What I used to tell people all the time as a worship leader, worship in a church is congregational singing. You want everybody involved. When you're doing songs that are in these crazy keys with these crazy complicated melodies and lyrics, and you have to read the lyrics because you can't remember it because it's got 47 verses and 2 bridges and a whatever, nobody can participate. Now you're just listening to them play. That's a concert. There's still a place for that. You can talk between the songs. You can encourage people. Lots of people have come to Christ at concerts. But worship in a church is a different animal. It's connecting people. It's finding songs. And it worked for generations. And now all of a sudden we have this new way. We visited so many churches since we've moved just trying to find one. And most of it, I go there and go, nah, nah, nah. Because if the worship is poor and it's just more, you know what? If that's all you've got and nobody really fellowships, right? They're just kind of out the door as soon as it's over if they do the concert experience. I can listen to it in my car and then walk in, or I can watch the live stream. But there's power in corporate worship. One puts 1,000 a flight, two puts 10,000 a flight. And so it has to happen. And I just don't see it happening in most churches. Everybody's trying to be Elevation. Everybody's trying to be SEU. Everybody's trying. Why don't you just be who God called you to be?
Right.
But that's just me. I'm an old man. What do I know?
No, I think you're right. I think people are looking for honesty and reality, and real Jesus, not the Hillsong Jesus. Nothing, I probably just got canceled on every station we're on. But
I doubt it.
But I think people are looking for real.
Yeah.
A Jesus they can talk to, not one they can just look at from afar. And I think the way you put it was perfect. Yeah, and that kind of we're gonna roll out of here with your song "Till You Can't," but before that, we have a little something that we do here. My oldest son Tyler is a legitimate hero. He's a firefighter.
Okay.
And my youngest son Matthew is profoundly autistic. So 9 seconds means something to Matthew. So we always ask our people who are kind enough to join us for Matthew's 9-ish seconds of wisdom. So if you could give some advice in 9-ish seconds, what would you say to the people who are watching us right now?
God is good all the time. No matter what's happening, God is still good. He's your way out. He's also your way through.
Yeah, perfect. So tell us about Till You Can't.
This was a lady, if my phone dies, then nice being with you. This was a lady that I used to go to church with. She has a ministry where she has a horse that she goes around. This horse is very specially trained. It only answers her voice. It won't respond to anything else but her voice. So she uses it about, the whole thing about the shepherd. You know his voice. You follow his voice. You won't follow the voice of a stranger, and to share the gospel about hearing the voice of Christ. She had an idea. She wanted to play this song, and that it's a great song. It's got a wonderful message the way it is. But she said, what do you think about maybe gospelizing it? I think is the term she used. And so I said, sure, why not? I used to rewrite songs. I did that way before Mercy Me ever did. I was doing that back in the 80s, rewriting these songs with Christian lyrics, But I said, okay, well, let's do that. So I kind of reimagined and reconfigured the lyrics to make it a gospel take on Cody Johnson. And my friends, the Azadors from the Philippines, provided the background vocals and did all the mixing for me. But this is actually a gospel take on Till You Can't. It puts, it's all about, you think you can call on Jesus, we better do it now, because one day you're not going to be able to.
And it's a beautiful song. And Matt, so your phone doesn't die. Matt Hybarger, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I do want to get on the phone with you or get down to Texas, and I want to hear more of your stories because you got a ton of them. So thank you so much. And as we've been talking, we've been running your socials and your YouTube page underneath us so people can find you there.
Cool.
And we will definitely tag it at the end of the show. But Matt, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. And we're going to roll out of here with Matthew Hybarger, Till You Can't.
All right. Thanks, man.
Take care.
You can tell your old man you'll hear about his Jesus on down the line. You just got too much on your plate, you don't have the time. You can always take a rain check on God's plan. Till you can't. You can keep putting off the spirit who's been tugging at your heart, believing that there's always time to make a brand new start. That you can always take a hold of Jesus' hand. Till you can't. If you got a chance, take it. Take it while you got a chance. You wanna be free. you ever look back, 'cause God gave his only son to save you, and he'll keep on waiting for you to say yes till you can't. You got a past of sin and heartache and mistakes are weighing on your mind, so waiting on you to find the faith to ask him in your life. You can always get around to Jesus and be born again till you can't. If you got a chance, take it. Take it while you got a chance. You wanna be free, chase him. Don't you ever look back, 'cause God gave his only son to save you, and he'll keep on waiting for you to say yes until you can't. So take that Bible from the table and kneel down and pray. Then you can give your life to Jesus before it's all too late. Don't wait on tomorrow, 'cause tomorrow may not show. Say, please forgive me, Lord, I love you, 'cause man, you never know. If you got a chance, take it. Take it while you got a chance. You wanna be free, chase him. Don't you ever look back, 'cause God gave his only son to save you, and he'll keep on waiting for you to say yes until you can't. If you got a chance, take it. Take it while you got a chance. You wanna be free, chase him. Don't you ever look back. God gave his only son to save you, and he'll keep on waiting for you to say yes until you can't.